Okay, it's another beautiful Tuesday in April. We were gone for a couple of weeks in Phoenix, Arizona, and got to meet quite a number of folks in person, which just tickles me to death. And I got to see a number of you, actually. But we're back in Georgia. Kelly was a delightful help and hosted the video chat for last week. Week before that, we did the video chat actually in Phoenix and hosted the Sandy Brown period, which is now at an end. Just that 1 week. We just couldn't adjust the colors. It was a different week or a different location, and there's a color adjustment, and we got there too late, and I just couldn't do it. So I apologize for that. But we're now back in familiar lighting. So let me begin with the questions that we've been sent, and there are millions, so we're going to need to get into those. First reader or writer says, we've only been married a few months. We're both in our 60s and have a great marriage. What have you seen as the major obstacles that older couples may face during second marriages? You know, they're really not so different from anybody else's marriages. You know, it's all about learning to love unconditionally. Learning to avoid selfishness, learning to tell the truth, learning to care about partners, learning to watch for the times that you'll tend to think, and the writer, I can't tell really whether it's a he or a she. I'm going to assume in this case that it's a he, just for fun. Learning to watch for the times when you'll tend to think things like, why in the world does she, in other words, trying to change our partner. Those are the difficult times. Those are the times that we get into trouble when we're trying to change her, trying to change him. Those are the bad times. When we focus on how can I be more loving, how can I be more understanding, what can I do to give more, how can I be more patient, how can I see better, things will almost uniformly be taking steps forward. That does not mean that our partners don't have a lot more to learn, don't have a lot more to understand, don't have a lot more to give. Of course they do. But the first question to ask is always, what can I do more? And if we'll take that as our first step, wow, what a big step we'll take in the positive. Now, the biggest difference that I see in older couples, of course, is inflexibility. We do have a tendency after 60 years to want to do things our way more than when we're 16, although I got to tell you, most people quit being flexible after about age 6. So the differences aren't that great. I see couples, and I've now seen thousands of couples, and couples in their 20s can be just as inflexible as couples in their 60s. They just dig their heels in and say, I want it done my way. So it's really not a whole lot different in the 20s and 60s. So I would recommend that the two of you read the marriage book together, cover to cover, and I would recommend that you read the companion book, and that's 40 Days to Real Love and Happiness in Marriage, and keep going over those principles. And it will really just work miracles in your life as you just keep going over them again and again. Here's a writer who says, I was at your seminar last night in Phoenix. Of course, this was written, more than a week ago, and had a question about giving advice in groups. The group that I feel the most love and support from is in groups that do not give advice. It seems that once we start giving advice, it turns into a free-for-all and everybody's an expert. We get away from just hearing and our story becomes important. And, I agree that it's a disaster when you get into groups and people say something and all people do is try to fix people. And they say, well, you ought to do this and you ought to do that. On the other hand, you can't say that the solution to that is don't give advice. Because sometimes people come to a group and they say, I'm just flat lost. I'm lost and confused, and I have absolutely no idea what to do. I don't know. And what they're asking for is, what should I do? Well, in that case, when somebody says, for example, I have a son who's doing this, I'm completely confused, I'm lost, I don't know what the next step is. Simply saying to them, gosh, I understand. I can see how you're just not feeling sufficiently loved, and we understand, and we love you, and we support you. That's good. That's great, in fact. But sometimes that just isn't enough for that person. Sometimes they need to know what a loving next move looks like. They've never seen it. And so we need to at least give them options. Well, a loving next move might look like this, or it might look like that. Or here are 3 loving next moves that you might consider. As long as we don't tell them, you should do this. Now, I sometimes probably tend to give advice more than most, and that's probably because people have heard advice from all over the planet, and then they come to me after having heard advice all over the planet and say, so I've heard all this advice, what do you think? And that's what they're looking for, is advice. So admittedly, I probably tend to give more than I would in most group situations. Whereas if I'm in my own home group, I don't tend to speak as much. So your average group is a little different than what you're hearing here, where people write in and say, what do I do? So you have to think and use common sense. If people aren't asking for advice, well then, you have to kind of listen and think. If people are saying, I'm feeling frustrated and lost and I just feel alone and empty, well then love them. And if they're not asking for advice, then shut up and don't give it. But when somebody says, I want it, well, think about it and maybe offer them some options. So it really is a lot of common sense involved. And then sometimes it's very helpful to actually ask people. I do this all the time, and I say to them, so are you getting what you need? I may even speak to somebody and then say to them, when people are live, it's different than you're getting here, because I'm reading questions and I'm just speaking, which is kind of frustrates the trash out of me, because I love doing live appearances with audiences because I can get immediate feedback. But when I'm doing it live, I will say to them, so are you getting what you're needing here? How are you feeling as I'm speaking to you? I can ask them that. Way more fulfilling. And I suggest you do that in groups. Ask them if they're getting what they're needing. Don't wonder. It's easy to find out right on the spot. Here's somebody from another country who wrote and said, you saved my life. Not that I was suicidal, it was even worse. I was on the field of death, physically alive, but emotionally and spiritually dead. Now this is somebody who's really got some spiritual insight, some wisdom, because most people walk around breathing, eating, drinking, walking, and don't understand that that's not living. Here's somebody who gets it. Somebody who says, it's not that I was suicidal, it was worse than being suicidal. There are so many people who don't realize in what terrible shape they are, and here's somebody who gets it. A few years ago, she said, I finally realized that my relationships were not what I wanted out of them, that I'd not been happy while I was in them, that it was terribly painful for me after the breakup, so I read a few books on relationships, and then she went into some of the books and some of the things she learned, and she said, I got a few good things out of them, but I was still essentially unhappy whether I was in or out of a relationship. She said, none of the books actually answered my 2 questions. Why do I feel the way I feel, and what can I do about it? And then she went into how that now she's reading and she's been watching archives of the video chats, and she's sharing this with her friends, and in the process of now participating in the conference calls, and trying to start real love groups where she lives. I mean, what a hoot. So just I'm welcoming you to because I think she's probably on the video chat now, and welcoming you to the Real Love community and hoping that you have a wonderful time. We surely are, and glad you're with us. Here's somebody who says she says, I'm new to Real Love and have a few questions. If you're loving to your partner and he's still not giving you what you need, friendship, intimacy, sharing, trust, how do you know when it's time to give up? What do you do when you've told your partner what you need in your marriage and he seems to refuse to give it to you? So the longer answer you'll find if you'll read Real Love and Marriage. There's a lot in there about that, about making a decision when to give up. But a shorter answer is, first, you do everything you can do to find answers to understand yourself and to find what you can in the way of real love to fill yourself up. And that's not to get it from him. Biggest mistake we make is to try to shoehorn or shovel real love out of people who don't have it, which of course is, frustrating to us and annoying to them. And so learn how to tell the truth about yourself by going to the website, by reading whatever real love books you can find available, and telling the truth about yourself to people on conference calls, to friends. You'll learn about this as you read about it. Get all the real love that you can, and then take that back to your partner and give to him. Because if you're at this place in your partnership and he seems to be refusing to give it to you, it's not that he's refusing. It's not that he has this secret stash and he's saying, well, no, I'm not going to give it to her. He can't, because he doesn't have it. So where else is he going to give it? Where else is he going to get it? Obviously, he doesn't have it. Obviously, nobody in his entire life to this point has given it to him. So what chance has he got but you? So give him what you have, and then observe what changes you see in your relationship with him. And bit by bit, almost invariably, you will see some changes in him. And it will probably be slow. So practice, and the books will tell you about that. You'll learn about it in Real Love and Marriage, for example. You love him, and you will slowly see changes in him. And see what that's like. It's kind of like, watering a small plant. It may take you a while, but see what happens as you do that. Then you continue. You say, if you continue to love your partner without getting what you need from him, wouldn't finding other ways to get these needs met become living parallel lives? Not if you're sufficiently loving to him. If you're lavishing the unconditional love you're getting from others on him, that's not a parallel life. No, you're devoting your unconditional love to him. It's not parallel at all. It becomes tremendously unconditionally loving on your part to give this to him. So, no, your lives actually become more intertwined as you become unconditionally loving toward him. Next question. Is it wrong to want your partner to apologize in order to be forgiven? I've been clear with my husband that he has hurt me, and he refuses to apologize and shows little remorse. I don't get how you can understand another person's hurt and not do it again if you don't first understand what you did and feel remorse for it. I don't think he really cares about my feelings and happiness. So if he's showing no remorse, you'd have to understand that he's probably feeling so empty that he's not capable of caring about you. So you're going to have to completely reframe the way you see things, sweetie. Here you're trying to get somebody who's so empty and lonely and afraid that he's a completely selfish human being. Now see, when I say the word selfish, you hear all the bad things. Oh, selfish and horrible. No, Selfish because he's only capable of thinking about himself. So if he's only capable of thinking about himself and you're sitting there thinking, I want him to apologize, well, then you're on another planet, honey. If he can only think about him, what's the likelihood that he's going to be suddenly sensitive and be thinking about what he's done to you and go, well, gosh, I've hurt her feelings. Well, I'm sorry, sweetie. What do you think? That ain't going to happen. If he's sufficiently lonely and hurt and empty, he's only going to be thinking about him. If I park a truck on your foot and I put you in enough pain, there's no way you're going to be thinking about the starving children in Ethiopia, is there? No. You're going to become completely selfish because of your pain. And that's the position that he's in. So you're trying to get a pig to sing, and it isn't going to happen. And it's all because of his emptiness. So he can't know remorse. He only knows pain. So you've got to learn to see him differently. And so the trick is you have to learn to forgive him unilaterally, unconditionally. It's a gift. You have to get enough love in your life from other people, it's kind of like the question I just dealt with, where you can give him your understanding, where you can see his pain, where you can forgive him, accept him, see him, and begin to love him to the point where he's even going to be able to begin to see you, much less even understand what an apology means. So the much bigger issue here isn't his apologizing, it's his understanding what love even looks like. That's a much more important issue. If he were to apologize, he wouldn't even mean it at this point. Do you see? So, I could get him in a headlock and beat the trash out of him and punch him in the head and get him to apologize, and it wouldn't mean anything because he's too empty to know even that he's hurt you. So work on loving him to the point where he's not so empty. That's what really matters in your relationship, not apologies. Here's somebody who says, I have a friend who had a whirlwind romance of a few weeks. She got to know this guy on the internet for a few weeks, spent just a few days with him, and now all of a sudden, she says, my friend has planned this marriage to this guy. So hardly knew this guy at all. And now I feel like I'm supposed to act all happy for her upcoming wedding. That I think is way too soon. And I'd be lying with every pore of my body if I acted happy for her. Because I believe that at some point her clinging and her jealousy and her control is going to cause problems and probably divorce. And now she's quitting her well-paid job and moving out of the state with this guy when I think that this marriage is just flat not going to work. Now, I realize, she says, she's beating me to the punch. She knows me too well. You say, I realize that all this is none of my business. But I don't know how to behave around her now. I don't know how to be loving with her. I'm a liar, and I don't know how to tell the truth about my lying either, since the relationship might last forever and it might fail. So how can I learn from this? What's my problem? I feel this way from time to time when people around me are doing crazy things, and I think I can see horrible consequences ensuing. When I asked her about leaving her job, she said, it doesn't matter since she's going to be with this man forever and ever. And that's when my brain goes into what the F mode instead of seeing her clearly and loving her. And thereafter, I'm a liar to her because what I really think about her is that she must be nuts. And this has got to stop. And then she says, yep, I know, Greg, it's a classic, and I'm the classic controller, and I can't love her while she's being nuts. Why can't I figure out why I'm not loving with her? Actually, I think you are loving her. Now, there's a mixture in here. you really do care about her. Almost all of our behaviors have kind of mixed motivations. Part of us unconditionally cares about people, and part of us has some getting and protecting in it. But you really care about this woman. You see her, having probably been in multiple relationships, and here she's met this guy, on the internet, and she's known him for days, and now she's going to quit her job and poof, move out of state with this guy who she probably doesn't know very well. And what you see is disaster spelled in big letters, probably with lipstick across her forehead. And you're worried about her. Well, frankly, I think that's just downright sweet. So, how well do you know her? Sounds like you probably know her pretty well. If you didn't know her very well, then I would recommend that you just smile and say, "Oh, I'm so glad for you," and then just watch her, march off to the slaughterhouse. I mean, what can you do with somebody you don't know very well? There are billions of people on the planet I don't know very well, and what am I going to do? Give them advice? If you do know her very well, then I kind of look at it like this. If I know somebody well, and I feel like they're doing something that is going to be potentially harmful to them, and they're my friend, and I care about them, well then, if I don't point out something that's potentially harmful, then who else will? So, I'm probably crazy, but I feel like that's my job. If I'm their friend, then I'm going to say something. Now, I'm not going to try to stop them. That's a different goal. If your goal is to stop her, then you're crazy, because that isn't your job. But as a good friend, I feel like it is my job to at least say something sane to them. Like, I would sit down with her and I would say, "Look, Susie, I care about you, right? I've known you for X years. I've seen these behavior patterns from you in the past. I have seen you in relationships do this and this and this. And what I see in this relationship with this guy is the potential for a repeat of behavior patterns. I know it feels great. There's no doubt about that. I can see it in your face. The feelings are real. There's no doubt that because they always tell you, "Oh, this is so different. I feel so good." I got that. I got that it feels good. There's no arguing that it feels good. But is it real happiness? That's the question. When somebody's in the middle of having sex with their boyfriend, can you argue with them that it feels good? No. I agree with you. It feels good, all right. But is it real happiness? Now, here's the part that's pretty easy to talk to them about. You say, "So, have you felt really good with past boyfriends and had it not work out?" Now you've got them. Well, yeah. So, is it possible that this, quote, really good feeling may not be enough of an indication that it's real happiness? You say, "Well, this guy's really different." How do you know? Is it possible that there's maybe some more you need to learn about him and about relationships? Is that possible? And then you may point out some things about relationships and about him that she doesn't know. Things like, do you know about his tendency toward anger, running, withdrawal? Teach her a little bit about real love. You don't need to give her the entire book, although that's certainly a possibility too. But teach her a little wisdom. Now, I've done this with people. So I'm not just, making up some theoretical possibility. I've done this with some people, and I've seen it go a variety of ways. I have had this exact conversation with people and watched people's engagements break off immediately, and had people write me back and say, "Oh, thank you so much. It would have been a disaster." And I was very glad I had the conversation. On the other hand, years ago, I had this exact conversation with my best friend in the whole world, and I didn't get 2 sentences into the conversation, I was his best man, or excuse me, I was going to be his best man at his wedding, and I was disinvited from the rest of his life for suggesting that there are some things that he hadn't thought about. So he told me that he was never going to speak to me until, actually in this case, I think the preference was until I died. So you just don't know how it's going to turn out. But my preference is that if I really care about somebody, am I willing to take the risk? And it turns out that in this particular case, even with my best friend, it turns out that the things I was pointing out needed to be pointed out. And the things I pointed out were true. And the marriage didn't work out. And years later, in great part because I did have the courage to point him out, he and I are still best friends. So it's worth pointing out the truth. The truth always prevails. So I'm more sad when I don't speak the truth to people I care about than if I do and it doesn't work out very well. So just keep in mind that the goal is just to simply say what's true and to care about somebody, not to stop them, which we do not have the right to do. Here's somebody who says, I have a friend who constantly bosses me around. She tells me what I should do when I'm not asking for or seeking her advice. Without my asking, she tells me what I should wear, how I should wear my hair and makeup, told me that I looked like a hag in a certain color. I'm sure she meant that in a kind way. We're both in the same line of work, and she tells me what I should do in my business when I'm not asking for her opinion. Also, I have plans to spend one day with her when I visit a large city this summer, and she's already telling me what we'll be doing and where we'll be going. She wants me to go into this large city when we meet to meet her plastic surgeon. And I told her that I was there to see family and friends and didn't care to do that. So that's pretty bossy. I just don't know how to handle this relationship. I'm not the one who calls her on the phone, and I only take her calls occasionally. I'm uncomfortable, even distressed around her. And the last time I went to this city, I did not look her up for that reason. I've been trying to be loving by being quiet and not responding to her criticisms, but I'm not sure if that's the best way to move forward. So my first question that I would ask may not be the one that would occur to you first, but it would be this. Do you really want this relationship in your life at all? Rather than how to deal with it, it would be, do you want it? We have one life. We have limited time in this one life. And, my thought is we kind of want as much unconditional love and happiness in this one life as we can get. And so we don't have to have every relationship that is offered to us. I don't accept every relationship that's offered to me. And so you don't have to have hers. I would suggest you ask yourself that question. Do you want a relationship with this person? Does it contribute materially to the happiness in your life? If no, then quit returning her phone calls and emails. When she says, do you want to spend time doing? No. And if she says, why? Well, I'm too busy. If you don't have the guts to explain to her why, because the answer is, a lot of people couldn't hear that answer. Or you could tell her why. This relationship is draining to me, because I have said that to people. Now, is that a loving thing to do? Yeah, it is. It's caring about her happiness. Are you contributing to her happiness? No. She's a controlling, angry, manipulative person, and are you making her happy? No. So, are you loving her? No, you're not. She can control any number of thousands of people in her life. She doesn't need you. She can control tree stumps and sticks and fire hydrants. She can do that with anybody. You're not helping her. So, let her go on and exercise her control over other people more productively. And if she's not contributing to your life, then she's detracting from it and detracting from your ability to contribute love to your, child, husband. And so actually it's more loving to the other people around you if you sever this relationship. I'm just saying that's one thing to consider if you decide not to have this relationship. I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm just saying if the answer were no, that would be a rationale. We think that in order to be loving, we have to say yes to every relationship, and no, we don't. So that's one thing to consider. Now, if yes, if you decide to continue with this relationship, then my question is, why do you keep listening to these controlling words? One reason that we tend to is that we don't know what words to say back. And so I would consider that you actually think about what you're going to say to her. She's so overbearing. There have actually been studies done that show that people tend to listen to the person in the group who is simply the loudest. We do. Whoever talks the most and the loudest, we tend to listen to. So you need to have a response. And you might say something, like, Susie, I've been making a mistake for a long time. So this is entirely my fault. For as long as we've been friends, you've been telling me how to wear my hair, how to wear my makeup, how to run my business, and so on. And I haven't said anything. So you have come to believe that I have wanted to hear those comments. That's my fault because I've led you to believe that. But I really haven't. So in the future, we can go one of two ways. What I would prefer that you said was this. I would prefer that you said, I have a suggestion to make about your blank. Hair, business, makeup, whatever. That's what I would prefer. Would you like to hear it? That's what I'd like. But I'm not trying to control you. I'm just telling you what I would prefer. So you don't have to do that. I'm just telling you what I'd like. And if you choose not to put it in the form of a suggestion, so if you simply just intrude, which is what you've been doing all this time, then what I'm going to be doing is simply stopping you. I'm just going to stop you, raise my hand, and say, that's enough. And then it will be up to you whether you're offended or not. But I will stop you. And if it continues, our relationship will stop. So see, you're giving her a choice. And you have to say this just as calmly as you would describe her hair. Which of course you wouldn't do. But the reason that people constantly control the people around them is because those people let them. And if there's somebody that is constantly telling us what to do, well, who's the stupid one? We are, because we let them do it. So you have to come up with some clearly formulated sentence, pattern, approach, something to tell her, no, I really don't want to hear that. I had a mother-in-law many years ago who told everybody what to say, what to do, how to dress, how to comb their hair, everything. And I'd been married for a very short period of time, and she came out into the driveway and she started to tell me how to change a tire. And I got up from the ground and I stood up and I looked her in the eye and I said, I love you. I appreciate the support that you give to my family. I look forward to our continued association for many years. And I want you to listen very closely. If I ever want your opinion on any subject at all, of any description, you will know, because you will see my lips moving and I will ask you for your opinion. Was there any part of this that was not clear? And she said, well, but I was just... I said, was there any misunderstanding about what I just said? She said, well, but... If I want your opinion, I will ask you for it. Otherwise, don't offer it. And if you do, I will stop you immediately. And if we're within a large group of people, I will stop you in front of everybody. So it's up to you whether you want to be embarrassed publicly or not. We got along great. Next writer. I've been married 10 years, but I'm currently separated from my husband. For the last last year and a half, things have been really bad. I'm only in my 30s, but I'm going through perimenopause, and he blames all of our problems on that. He's a functioning alcoholic, and I wrote her and I asked, what's that mean? And he drinks apparently 2 to 12 beers every night. So we're talking on the phone, but only if I initiate the call. He never calls, which I find hurtful. Many times he's told me that I was the biggest mistake he ever made. So I'm guessing that doesn't feel really good. I know he's drowning, and so am I. The only person that I can honestly say I've gotten real love from is a lifelong childhood friend, and without her, I don't know how I would live. We fight all the time, even on the phone. I know I say things that I shouldn't. He told me that he only married me because he didn't want to lose me when I told him that it wasn't right that we were living together and not married. For the first 5 years, I thought we were very happy, but I became possessive and controlling, and I was a real victim. In June 2007, he decided to move us back to his little hometown, but I wasn't ready to go. He said he'd move without me, so I went. His ex-stepmother lived next door at the time, and he had had a sexual relationship with her in the past. She went everywhere with us, out to dinner, everywhere. Not only that, but she's a very negative person and has used me over the years. She was always there. He refused to take me anywhere without her. It was sick. One time I went somewhere with my son, and then he took her out without me. That makes my blood pressure go up even now just thinking about it. At this point, we've been separated for a month, and the only time he'll spend with me is when there's nothing better to do. He was supposed to spend the entire past weekend with me, but a job came up. It hurts that I know that he has to work more because I'm not working now. Again, something he forced on me because every time I work, he hates it and seems threatened, and we still have the same bills. I don't believe in divorce unless there's been adultery, so I feel sort of stuck living with him. He's a good provider and a wonderful father. I would be fascinated to see him interacting with your son, because the odds that he's a wonderful father while being a husband like this are 0. I love him so much it hurts. I miss him. My son is in school, and I've said that I'm not going to pull him out again and move back. I will talk about moving back in June when school is out. My husband's very angry at me for the things that I have done, and I know that his anger is fear of being hurt again. I don't know if I should go back. So, it's like a terrible novel. You can't control him. You can only change you. So let's look at what you've said. You said that you would give anything to feel loved by him. And I haven't read all of this word for word. But it's pretty clear that he doesn't have any love to give. Here for years, he's been ignoring you, not spending time with you, spending time with his ex-stepmother with whom he has had sex, despite the fact that you don't really approve of this relationship. So you really got to change your goal. When you set your goal as, I would do anything to feel loved by him, when he doesn't have it to give, you're doomed right off, because he doesn't have it. So you've set a goal that can't be met. Doomed from the first step. I'd give anything to get flowers from a pig, is what you're saying. Well, the pig's never going to give you flowers, honey. He doesn't have it right now. It would be much more productive to say, I would give anything to feel loved and to be a more loving person. Now we have a goal that you can realize, whether he's involved or not. But you can't set goals ever that involve the behavior of another person, or you're dead. And see, you've set one that involves him. But you can set one that involves you. And this you can realize. You can get on the conference calls. You can get unconditionally loved all by yourself. You can become a more unconditionally loving person all by yourself. You can contribute more unconditional love to your marriage, to him, to your son, all by yourself, whether he's involved or not. That you can do. So that's critical. So you become more loving to him. You tell him, like you said here, you've done many wrong things in your marriage. So tell him what they are. Sit down with him, and instead of pounding him with all the terrible things he's done, tell him the things that you've done wrong. You said that he's angry for the things that you've done. So ask him what they are. Instead of defending yourself and exchanging hateful things that you say to each other, sit down and say, you know, Fred, I've screwed up from the very beginning. I've not been a loving wife. I've not been supportive. Tell me the things that I've done that have caused you frustration and anger. Just lay them on me. Tell me what they are. And then admit to all of them. And tell him the steps that you're taking to learn to become more loving. Wow, what have you got to lose? I mean, he's already treating you terribly. You've got nothing to lose by telling him, you're right, I've done all of those things. And quit expecting things of him. Practice being unconditionally loving toward him. How could you possibly lose? You're already separated, living 200 miles apart, and you're both treating each other like enemies. You can't go down. So learning to feel loved by other people and sharing that with him could only be an improvement. And you can also tell him separately on another occasion, not on this one. First you tell him, look, here's what I've done wrong. I'm going to learn to be more loving. Then gradually, bit by bit, as the two of you grow closer on another occasion, separate occasions, you can tell him some of the things that you would like, unconnected to your being wrong. You could say that you want to create a more loving relationship with him. You could say that part of that would involve less involvement with the ex-stepmother, for example. You could say, don't say things in great, general, sweeping terms. I'm telling you, when somebody's angry, they can't take that. You can't say, I don't want to ever anymore do anything with the witch, the ex-stepmother. Oh, man, I tell you, ultimatums just make this kind of guy crazy. But you could say, so on Friday, I've got a babysitter for little Bobby, your son, and I'd like to take you out to eat to Shea McDonald's, and I'd like to just go out, you and me, to McDonald's. You don't say, I'd like to go out to McDonald's and not take the witch for a change. You see, that's an attack. So you just say, I'd just like to go out to, the McDonald's or wherever it is you want to go, and just go and spend some time with you. See, that's all positive, all loving. He can hear that kind of thing. Whereas when you phrase it in the negative, well, how come we never do anything without her? This comes across less positively and tends to turn into the same old fight. See? And if you'll go on the conference calls, you'll discover from other people who've been doing this for a while many more positive things you can do. And read the marriage book. Here's another question from somebody who starts off. I wrote in earlier about my husband who doesn't know if he wants to be married. I'm going to deal with this next week because there's another email that's attached to this or involved with it that I never really got. So we'll get to that later. The next writer says, my children had cut me off for years, but I continued sending brief notes to them. I just received a letter from my son, Fred. I'm feeling blessed, but also apprehensive as he has let me in for 2 brief periods in the last 20 years. That's got to feel painful. And without any warning, then he slammed the door for another 8 years or so. He says he doesn't remember why he stopped talking to me on each occasion, but he says, quote, there are many things I don't understand and don't want to deal with. Now note that brief little phrase is very expressive. So, there are many things I don't understand. So what's he telling you? There are things he's dying to understand. But then the rest of it, I don't want to deal with. Now, why does he not want to deal with them? Because on the few occasions that he's talked to you, there's something about the way you deal with these things that he just hates. either the way you've been accusing, either the way you've preached at him, the way you haven't accepted him, the way you've blamed, something. Now, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But there's something about the way the things from the past have been explained to him, or the way the things have not been dealt with, something that have just torn him up. But it wasn't done in a loving way. And I'm not accusing, just saying it couldn't have been, or he wouldn't be avoiding it. And at some point, it's got to be dealt with because he wants to understand it. Then you continue. I'm almost certain that he's referring to my sexual orientation. He says that he's wanting some healing of our family. Again, this kid wants to understand. He wants to be healed. Since I last wrote to you, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. It has a built-in stressometer. How bad. I want to proceed, but it must be done with balance for me emotionally. How do I proceed? I want him in my life, but I also want to maintain my self-respect. He's now a high-ranking officer in the military, and his life is about order and perfection. His letter explains that simplicity is his nature. So what he's telling you is, see, he wants healing, but he wants the healing to happen kind of magically. He wants it just to go without any difficult steps on his part. He wants you to make it happen, which is understandable. So keep it simple. He told you how to do it. He says do it simple, so make it simple. So tell him this. Tell him something like, and remember earlier up, somebody said, so the groups I like best are where it's all about loving and there's no advice giving. Here I am doing advice. I'm giving you an example of how to do love and advice at the same time. So I really get how painful this is for you. But you really don't know what to say to this kid. So here he is. He's probably, high-ranking officer. He's probably, close to 40. And you're paralyzed because everything you've said to him has ended up making things worse. So, simple. Tell the truth. That's what the truth's what's simple. So you say to him, Fred, remember he's in pain. So talk about the pain. You say, I'm sure that I've made your life both difficult, because he's in pain, and complicated in many ways. Remember, he likes simple, and you ain't simple. See, you went, and you're his mother, and then you went and became a lesbian. Well, how dare you? See? And he's a military officer, and we don't do lesbians in the military. You just went and messed everything up, see, for him. So you just tell him, I'm sure I've made your life difficult and complicated in many ways. And you say, I regret that. I don't want to cause you pain in any way. So, and I don't, I hate it that I caused you pain before, and I don't want to cause you pain now. So, let's do what you want. You've expressed a desire for healing, which almost invariably comes with two things: understanding and connection. So let's do this in a way that would be best for you. Say, I believe that the pain in the past has resulted from something that I have probably done wrong. I've probably pushed for connection and understanding in ways that you didn't want. So let's not do it my way. Let's take it entirely at the pace and the direction that you would like. So what would you like? What would you like to do? Because I don't want to do anything that would be either too complicated or too painful or too uncomfortable. What do you want? Is there anything at all that you would like to know? Any questions that you have about the past or the present? I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not going to shove any particular reasoning down your throat. I'm not going to make excuses. Nothing. I'm interested. I have one goal only. That's your happiness, your healing, your understanding, no other agenda. And if it takes the rest of my life for you to believe that, then I'll be happy. So the next step is yours. Ask me whatever you want. Say whatever you want. It's obvious that I don't know what the next step to take is, or we wouldn't be in this place. So the next move is yours, and I support it entirely. And then you wait to see what he says. Isn't that cool? See, he's afraid of what your step is. So you let him make the next step, ask the next question, and say the next thing. Keep it simple. And by saying it that way, what are you demonstrating? That you care about him. Here's somebody who says, recently I was with a group of friends who are Christian. And I found that I was hiding the truth that I'm living with my partner because I was worried about what the people might think. And also that I felt for a long time that it shows up my brokenness and I guess my moral weakness. Anyway, this led to a situation where I spent quite a lot of time talking to one of the men in the group, and I was quite attracted to him and felt unfaithful toward my partner. I found him really interesting, and we had a lot of things in common, including a shared spiritual journey with this guy, something that I do not have with my partner. This situation has happened to me more than once while I have been with my partner, meeting other guys and feeling attracted to them, especially those who can understand my Christianity and with whom I can discuss my spiritual questions and struggles. I've never done anything other than had the feelings and thoughts about these other men, but I feel bad about this, and I know in one instance I had definitely given the impression to the guy that I was available. I've always told my partner when I have been meeting these other people, and I've also been honest with my partner about what happened with this particular group. So what's going on here? It feels like everything I never thought I would do in my life, I'm doing. I never ever thought I would live with someone before I was married. I was brought up to think that this was very, very wrong. At the time I moved in with my partner, I was in a rebellious phase. And now I find that I'm capable of dishonesty and infidelity as well. I want to be a person of integrity, but it appears that I am not. So I feel ashamed of myself. I would suggest that at least two important conflicts are going on here, and possibly a third important subject needs to be discussed. So first, and what you do is always up to you. But first there's you and God. So you were taught that it was wrong in God's eyes to live with someone when you are not married. But here you are not married and living with somebody. So you're living in conflict with what you understand to be God's laws, and yet claiming to be a Christian and trying to work all that out. And it ain't working for you. And I say it's not working for you because we're not talking here about my concepts of morality and God. We're talking about yours. If we want to be happy, we have to live in harmony with what we believe to be right. Have to do it. So you have to figure out what you believe to be right. You have to figure that out. And nobody can figure that out for you. I can't. Your neighbors can't. Your boyfriend can't. And your parents can't figure it out for you either. So, where are you going to start? You were raised Christian. You talk about a Christian God, so, you could start there. Study the Bible, talk to spiritual advisors, pray. That's a beginning. I don't know where that's going to take you. You may spend the rest of your life on this journey, but you're going to have to figure out what you believe is right. And then you're going to have to make a decision whether to change your beliefs or to bring your behavior into conformity with what you believe. That's what people end up doing. But eventually, you're going to have to come to a stand about what you believe. And once you do that, once you decide what is right, then there's only one way to go. Then you really have to bring your behavior into conformity with what you believe to be true. And most people do it the other way around. What most people do is they find the easiest way to live, and then they find a system of beliefs to conform to that. And I really recommend you don't do that. That's what I call the lazy system of beliefs. So, I'm not going to tell you what's right, but that's what most people's system of beliefs is based on. Almost everybody that I know in the world lives that way. They live a certain way, usually a lazy way, usually a way that's just a system of imitation love. People are experiencing indiscriminate pleasure, anger, sex, money, pleasure, whatever. People are pretty much doing whatever they want. And then what they do is they go find a system of beliefs, they find a God, they find a whatever that says whatever they're doing is the right thing. You watch people, and that's how they live. So what I suggest you do is you go investigate. I don't know whether you call it a church, that's up to you. But first you go investigate God on your own and figure out what's really right. Then conform your life to what's true. Then, do you end up staying with your boyfriend? Well, that depends on what you come to a conclusion is right, doesn't it? Which now brings us to you and your partner. So, for one thing, make your life come into conformity with what you believe is right. And then second, it's pretty obvious that you're not content with your relationship. So, here you are out talking to guys that you're in an exclusive relationship, and yet you keep going out and toying with other guys. So that's a pretty strong message that you're not content with that relationship. So, either there are only two ways to go here that make any sense. Either leave your relationship with your present boyfriend, leave it, get out. It's obvious you're not happy with it. Or enrich it with all your heart. Dive in and pour yourself into it. I mean, learn everything you can about unconditional love and pour all the love you've got into it, and do everything that you can to be not only unconditionally loving to him, but everything that you can to make it possible so that he can learn everything that he can about unconditional love, so that you have an unconditionally loving partner. Those are the only two ways that, really make any sense. But kind of piddling around in the middle, you're right. You're not living in integrity in that relationship. Not just with God, but not with him. So don't feel ashamed about it. Feeling ashamed is waste of time and energy. Just do something about the relationship. And third, you're just not feeling loved enough. Not a criticism, but if you were feeling sufficiently unconditionally loved, you wouldn't be having either of the first two problems. If you felt sufficiently unconditionally loved, your relationship with God would be richer, and you wouldn't be having this crisis in your present relationship. So really it all comes back to real love again. And it's not a race, sweetie. So relax. Practice telling the truth more. It's not a hurry. And as you're more truthful and feel more unconditional love, all of this will come into sharper focus, and you'll feel more fulfilled and enjoy your life more. So once again, it all comes back to it's always about real love, doesn't it? So it's been very enjoyable. Just delightful questions as usual from all of you. So don't hesitate to send your questions to greg@reallove.com. We got to quite a few. And look forward to getting to the rest a week from today. Thanks again for this opportunity to be back back with you again and look forward to seeing you a week from today. We'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.